sometime during. Thank you, Catherine. FinWell was created sometime during the pandemic by, obviously, Ryan is here and he's going to talk more about it. But fundamentally, FinWell are very are the experts really in talking about financial education and financial well-being and why it's relevant in the workplace, how it has come about and where it is currently headed. So I think, it's 10:32, Ryan, so happy for you to take over.
No worries. Yeah, thank you, Sandhya, and thanks for having me, you and Catherine. Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan. As you can see, the first kind of visual there. The main thing I wanted just to sort of point out on this, financial education and wellbeing for employers. That's what we're going to talk about today. But the hashtag that we use, this is pretty much our mission and our main objective when it comes to the work that we do. We've got a big job on our hands to try and get people to talk about money. And that's what we try and do with all the companies that we work with. And it's harder or easier said than done, shall I say. And I think talking about mental health and well-being, there's a massive stigma. There's a lot of great work that's being done in the mental health and well-being space, and it's come on, a huge amount. But financial health and well-being and financial education is even further behind. There's actually even a bigger stigma around that, and we're more likely to talk about mental health than we are about money. So that's a big job for us. But let's get straight into it. I'd like to try, if possible, and make this a little bit like one of the workshops that we actually offer to companies and make it as interactive as possible. It's still quite early for me, and I don't want to just talk at you for any length of time. That's not what we do with our work. We want to get you involved. I'm going to try and get you in a minute to use the emoji buttons. If you've never used them, don't be scared. We're going to try it for the first time, but I just want you to click an emoji if you think something's good or you want to say yes to something, or put it in the chat. Let's try and get as involved as possible, because that kind of sort of showcases the work that we do as well. But getting straight into this question, I want to start with this. We was asked to do some in-person events down at the Finance Hub in Tunbridge Wells, and we started with this. And we have these pigs. That's our logo, and they're quite cute, and people are probably more interested in them than they are actually our work. And Sandhya's actually got one, haven't you, Sandhya? So you have to keep quiet for this bit. But I wanted to pose a question to you all, and it looks at half of what financial well-being actually is. The first half is probably, education and the stuff that we didn't learn at school, and, knowing about key life stages and the financial matters that we need to know about. But the other half, arguably as important, if not more important, is all about the psychological side and our relationship with money. And it's really, really interesting for us to specialize in that area as well. So the question I'll ask you all, and there is a chance to win a FinWell pig. I know you're very excited about that, but it will be sent to you. But I want you to put in the chat, and Sandhya or Catherine, if you can see what the answers are and who puts the right answer first, what age you think our relationship with money is actually ingrained in us by. It might surprise you. It might be earlier or later, but this is a true thing. There was some some research done, from Cambridge University, and they found that, yes, we all have a relationship with money, and it is actually ingrained in us by a certain age, and there's various reasons for that. Have we got any guesses so far, Sandhya or Catherine, and what are they? Are they there? Have they gone? Have I bored them to death?
So 16, 8, 10, 7, 8 or 9.
Oh, that's interesting.
So Natasha's got 7, Mike's got 10, Paul's got 8, Gillian's got 16, Roz 8 or 9.
Okay, well, let me end the suspense. The winner is Natasha. So well done, Natasha. Brilliant reaction there. She's so happy. But so we'll get one sent over to you, and they are actually really nice, aren't they, Sandy? You can attest to that. But let's just look at why is that for a second? And if we think about growing up, we either had access to money or not, dependent on whether our families had money. it's down to whether money was spoken about, you know, in the household, and in most cases it's not. If it is spoken about, sometimes it's a cause of stress, you know, or anxiety in the household, or even trauma. So that has a big impact on it. Whether or not we're given access to money at an early age, if we have kind of pocket money and, you know, learn the value of money and kind of save up for things. Definitely, I've got 2 young children. I'm trying to teach them that we can't just have that card that's in daddy's pocket that just seems to pay for everything. We have to actually, that means that there's money in the bank and that has to be earned. But that has a big impact on it as well. So all of these things contribute really to our relationship with money. Some are healthier than others, but the positive is that it can change. And hopefully through the work that we do with companies now, because this still isn't done enough at school, it is being done at school to a certain extent, but hopefully the work that we do can improve this. So that's a little bit. The other thing, a little bit of engagement I want. So if you can try, put in the chat or click on an emoji. I just want to know, really easy one to start off. We normally do this in person and we ask people to hold their hands up, so we can't actually do that. Or you can actually put your hand up, actually, because I can see you. But easy one, who went to school? We'll start off really, really easy. Brilliant. Everyone. Ros kind of did, sort of. Yeah, brilliant. Perfect. Excellent. So we all went to school. Tell me then, who actually learned about money and how it works at school? Keep your hand up if you did learn about money. I don't mean just maths, which is very important, but did any of us learn about money? I'm not seeing too many hands. This is normally the case. Okay, tell me about, or keep your hand up if you actually learned how to budget or what credit scores are or anything like that. No one on that. How about mortgages or just basic interest rates, how inflation works? Anyone learn about that at school or even college or even university? No? Okay. And the last one, put your hand up if you do think that it might have been useful to have learned some of that stuff at school or college or university. Yeah, most of us. So just a little fun exercise, really, just to get a bit of physical well-being going as well. But yeah, we don't learn the basics at school, do we? And I think that's probably one of the roots of the problem, that it's not so much on the curriculum, or it's not being taught. So that leaves us to learn from somebody else, if we're lucky enough, from a parent or a guardian or someone in our family, or learn from our mistakes, which is typically what happens. So that's a little bit about that. Just to introduce myself, my name's Ryan Briggs. I'm the founder of FinWell. I'm a diploma qualified financial advisor. So that's my background. I've been in financial services for over 10 years. Really loved the work that I've done in that space. Worked as an independent financial advisor, and also for the last or previous 3-4 years for St James's Place. Been a member of the chamber for over 3 years, I think it is now as well. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also a mental health first aider, which is very important. Unfortunately, in lockdown, had personal experiences like most of us did, or many of us did, around poor relationships with money, poor mental health, friends and family as well, and unfortunately suicide as well. And that led me on to become an ambassador of Ripple Suicide Prevention, which I'll talk to you about maybe another time, but a fantastic charity that's doing brilliant work. So that's a little bit about me. Hopefully Lucy will be joining us at some point, who's a member of our team. She's just finishing off a one. Oh, as if by magic, look at that. She's just been asked to come in. I'll let her in, and then I'll do her intro. Let me know when she's in, Sandhya. There she is. That was perfect timing.
Hi, Lucy.
Be on the screen looking slightly more sophisticated than I'm just now, but hello.
I just said your name and you appeared, and you are asked to enter, so that was brilliant. But I was just introducing you. So yeah, Lucy was just actually on a one-to-one session with one of our clients, but brilliant member of our team, almost 30s or just over 30 years experience in HR and people-led roles, working with the likes of Apple and Gap and other organizations. So she'll be on the call to answer any questions as well and give her insights. But I wanted to start off with this visual, really, and this is one that we share on pretty much all of our introductory workshops with every company that we work with. I think it's really important. Has anyone, again, just put your hand up or put in the chat, have you heard the saying, oh, we're all in the same boat? And did you hear that through lockdown? Probably quite a lot. Anyone hear that one? Just put your hand up, let me know. Excellent, brilliant. We massively disagree with this. We don't think we're all in the same boat at all, actually. And if we need to think about, diversity and inclusion and belonging, we need to recognise that we're not in the same boat. Well, we try and liken it to the fact that we're all possibly in the same storm and we're all going through this very challenging time. But some of us are going to be affected more than others. It's probably going to impact all of us in some way. But we need to recognise that some people, are in a rowing boat and having to work that much harder. And some people that, we know or in our communities that actually might be drowning, without any life raft or anything like that. So we need to come together and try and help each other. And we do that through our workshops. We try and bring, rather than it just being a presentation of, factual information, we try and create psychologically safe spaces for employees at all levels and leadership teams to come together and talk about money, as I said before. And we've learned how to do that through trial and error, really, over the last few years. So that's a little bit about that. The agenda, the things that I just wanted to go through on this session, thinking about, after Sandhya invited us on here, what would be really useful to you, for you and your organisations, and maybe some of the organisations you might work with, and maybe some of your clients as well, is just to look at some of the challenges and some of the scary stats. I don't want to scare anyone, but there are some scary stats out there around, financial education and wellbeing, and also the links to mental health. So we'll go through a few of those. I'll introduce you to some of the team, including Lucy, that make up FinWell and make it what it is. I'll explain some of the lessons that we've learned along the way, along our journey, that might be useful. I'll then talk through some of the employer case studies, some of the companies that we're actually working with and what we're actually doing for them, and how that might be relevant to you and companies that you work with. And then we'll look at next steps and any Q&A. I'd love to hear, what your thoughts are as well. So the challenges, some of these stats are quite shocking. I'll go through some of them, and I know, Sandhya, you picked up on some of these. Feel free to come in on any of them. But when we did the in-person event at the Finance Hub in Tunbridge Wells, I think these really resonated with you, didn't they? But I'll go through some of them. I think most of us know about the importance around mental health and wellbeing now. I think that's come on, as I said, leaps and bounds. There's still work to be done, but that's been brilliant. And what we've realised, and in lots of publication and guides and reports that have been published out there, that we realise now financial worries and stresses and anxieties are now the biggest cause of stress for UK employees. And that's from the Chartered Institute of Professional Personnel and Development. So really, really important that we understand that it is an issue. Another stat here, around 1 in 5 employees now actually stating on surveys, so saying that money worries and money anxieties are actually impacting their job. So that's 1 in 5 that are admitting it openly, whether it's an anonymous survey or not. I think it's a lot higher than that, actually, and it's going to probably get a lot higher than that. But that's quite an interesting one. There's a breakdown here of the different age demographics of who's being affected more. So that's quite an interesting one. The younger generations definitely being affected. And as you go through, people in later stages of their careers being affected as well. So that's quite an interesting one there. 56% of people actually not confident about managing money. I've seen other reports where it's higher than that, but that's quite a shocking one. And again, that probably leads back to the fact that we didn't learn the basics at school, possibly because some of us haven't needed to manage money as closely as we have now. I think we speak to people about budgeting, and the amount of people that just have never done it, or the extent of their budgeting is looking at their app and looking at their balance, and if it's all right, that's okay, they're happy, and if it's not, they're worried. That's the extent of it, and that happens all the time. That's really, really common. So yeah, a big lack of confidence when it comes to managing money. 20% of people in the UK having less than £100 in savings. Really, really shocking. Building financial resilience is something that we work on a lot. It's one of the 5 key elements of financial wellbeing. And building up an emergency pot of money is so important, and can really improve your financial well-being and your mental well-being. But quite hard to do that. You know, if you've not got a plan in place and you haven't got a budget in place and you've never been taught how to do that, so many people live to survive the month, hope to have some money at the end of each month, but sometimes fail on that. So that's quite a shocking one. The links between, you know, financial well-being and mental health. This shows, you know, 50% that are having problem debt also have a mental health challenge as well, and vice versa. You know, these really, everything we do at FinWell completely links financial education and financial well-being and mental health, because, you know, that they are so intrinsically linked. Effects on other areas of well-being, you know, all areas of well-being are affected by money, unfortunately. So looking at some of the stats around sleep, which is so vitally important, obviously on the physical well-being side, showing the links there. This is a terrible one, really. This was released by Champion Health in their cost of living report. And it actually shows that those experiencing financial stress are twice as likely to have thoughts of self-harm or suicide. So it's one that we just have to address. We have to try and do whatever we can to make an impact on this. 56, as I was saying before about not budgeting, 56% of adults in the UK that don't have a budget, something that we try and have an impact on. In fact, Lucy and Justine run a dedicated session with companies and their employees where they will actually go through a live demonstration of how to budget and the different ways to do it, and how to maybe take the steps to put something in place. That's been really popular. Maybe Lucy will talk about that in a bit. Last couple then, 5% of employees believing that their workplace has a comprehensive set of policies, something that I know Sanja's really passionate and keen about changing, making sure that we increase that number. And on the other side of that, 91% of HR professionals saying that the employer does have a responsibility to improve financial well-being beyond pay and possibly pensions as well. So there's some of the stats for you. We will share this. Obviously, this is being recorded. So if you want to use some of those stats, feel free to do so. They're also available on our website. So we'll send a link out after so that you can signpost people to that or use that as you want to. So a little bit about FinWell then. Our philosophy are these three things, really. We want employees and leadership teams to understand, measure, we would include measure in that, and improve their financial well-being. That hopefully leads on to healthier relationships to money for the long term, and hopefully that leads on to better mental health as well. A little bit about our team. It's grown organically. We've got a great team. We've got people from all different backgrounds, different cultures, different ages, different areas of speciality, that we've learned along the way how many different elements to financial education and well-being there are. So that's a little bit about our team. But going into that, just to show and point out some of these, Lucy, who's on the call, is also known as our budgeting queen. So what she doesn't know about budgeting and getting money to work for you and get on top of that isn't worth knowing. We also have people like Tracy. So just to talk about Tracy. Tracy has joined our team. She's also a member of the chamber, as someone who has experienced the menopause and the challenges that brings, but also has understood the massive impacts that's had on her financial well-being and vice versa. So her whole kind of area of speciality is to help people understand the symptoms around menopause, but also the impact it can have around money as well, and take people on a journey to try and get through that.
Ryan,
yes.
Sorry to jump in. I'm just conscious that we're 20 minutes in. I think it might be an idea to just open up the room to some questions.
Yes.
That's where
Ryan, it's Mike. Could you actually tell us what you do? Because so far we have no idea what you actually do for companies.
Yeah, let me get to that bit. This is what we do, basically. I didn't want it to be too much of a pitch, but these are the four things that essentially we do for companies. So we would create educational content for them. We would put on group workshops, either online or in person. We would look at all different topics and themes, as I've mentioned, dependent on what their employees need. We would take that forward to do one-to-one sessions if there's a need for that. And then we've also developed leadership training. So similar to mental health first aid training, we was asked by quite a few of our clients to design and deliver financial health first aid training for leaders and senior managers, wellbeing leads and mental health first aiders. So essentially that's what we do. Let me give you some of the case studies from some of the companies that we've worked with. So Devon, Dorset and Cornwall Police, we work with quite a few police forces, and they have looked at, first of all, the educational content side. So they wanted to give access to their 9,000 or so employees across those regions with really good, trusted financial educational content. They also wanted to look at gathering the data. So a lot of companies struggle to find out, well, what do employees actually want and need? So they've worked with us, or we've worked with them, to put some videos together and some surveys where they can actually establish what the needs are, and also score all 9,000 or any of them that take it up, score their own financial well-being, so they can see where the pain points are, and understand, you know, what they might want to put into a program further down the line. Charities Aid Foundation, has anybody heard of CAF, the Charities Aid Foundation? They're local to me in Kings Hill. We've done lots of work with them, so educational content, also the group workshops. We've done a whole range of group workshops with Charities Aid Foundation, money management, basic budgeting, right the way through looking at protecting what's important, to investing for your future, modern retirement planning as well. So they've had a whole package with us. We've also got, I'll give you here, Moorfields Eye Hospital. So we work with quite a few NHS trusts. Quite interestingly, they set up a hardship grant, a hardship fund. And what they wanted to do was utilize our team and our one-to-one sessions as part of that process. So anybody that wanted to apply for their hardship fund, they'd have a one-to-one with us, and hopefully we'd be able to help them with other areas that they might have been struggling with. And then they would make the decision, you know, on whether they got that grant or not. Some others, Sutton Council and Kingston Council are going ahead with the leadership training. So we are rolling out leadership training for their mental health first aiders, and upskilling them really to try and include financial health first aid as well as mental health first aid. So that's some of the work that we've done with some of the companies. Conscious for time, just to open it up for questions if you want, and you know, I'd like to hear what you're seeing, you know, within your own organizations and possibly within other companies that you work with. You know, what are the challenges, and how can we help, really?
Ryan, thank you for that. And I just wanted to open, you know, just to go back to the last question. And I just wanted to open this room out to some of the instances that I have noticed, especially in the last year, particularly. One case was where we had a recurring pattern of somebody going off sick. And a little bit of digging turned out that this person had an addiction problem with alcohol. But then that directly linked to the number of advances this person was taking out of work. And situations like that, I think, and at that time, obviously, I didn't have an insight into what you do and, you know, how you are able to help. We did end up sort of ultimately dismissing that employee, and which was definitely the right thing to do for that, you know, possibly for that client. But I think it's things like that where if we can get you in, looking back, and of course that's the power of hindsight, if you had been there well before these issues started off, before the employer started advancing money to this employee, getting themselves into a downward spiral possibly, it might have had a different outcome. We don't know. But that's a bit like the sliding door story. But that is one example that comes to mind for me in terms of where and how you could have made a difference both to because I'm not entirely in favor of employers advancing money left, right, and center. Sometimes it is dire, it needs to be done to help. But at that, you know, other times it just can't be encouraged and it can't carry on indefinitely.
Yeah, I know you are passionate about the being proactive and preventative, aren't you, rather than reactive. And And we've seen that recently, you know, really sad cases with a few companies, really, also around domestic abuse and financial control and coercive control and things like this. And the links that has back to financial education. So we've been asked to create content and support and workshops around that. So it's kind of developed as we've gone on, and we've kind of built our team with specialist experience, really, that can help in these areas and maybe have personal experience in these areas as well.
Any questions, anyone? In terms of just, we'll be happy to share what you've come across at work.
Ryan, can I, oh, sorry, after you.
No, I mean, I work in a law firm, you know, and we do work and we send out invoices, and we do have some clients that don't pay on time. And sometimes it's because they don't have the money, or they don't have it immediately, and we have to end up being very patient, and that's how we have to handle things. But if things get very, you know, long term, then we can't act for them. And actually, sometimes when it comes to, you know, legal services, you need some advice. Either you come yourself, or, you know, somebody's told you need to come for advice. Sometimes people just don't want to face up to, you know, the cost of certain things that they need. So, I mean, in a way, I mean, do you, you know, in your support, you know, I suppose you'd help people with all their bills, you know, the bills that they expect, and also sometimes the unexpected bills. So you help them budget, prioritize, see the value in.
Yeah, definitely. Lucy, it might be good for you to come in, as this is sort of one of Lucy's specialist areas, really, around sort of budgeting and money management and building up financial resilience and emergency funds. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Lucy?
Yeah, it's lots of people do find themselves, I guess, coming to you for reactive advice. I don't know, maybe have they planned it for the next 6 months prior? Probably not. Something's happened in their life and need to come and see you. So there's every chance they haven't got that emergency fund built up or any spare cash. So in order to pay you, I'm guessing. And what we do is exactly that, you know, having to seek professional advice, you know, whatever that may be. Emergency funds are absolutely key and critical for most of us, and actually essentially make most people living on the credit card never-ending cycle. Something happens, it goes on the credit card. They try and pay off their debt, but something else happens, so they have to put it on the credit card. And this happens, you know, all the time. So we do teach people how to create some savings and also pay off their debt and just live within their means more meaningfully, I suppose.
Also, just on that, you mentioned that, you know, it's the businesses that can't pay as well sometimes, or are struggling, the smaller companies and the SMEs. And we've got a partnership with HR department, and we are trying to focus a lot of our work now on the smaller and medium-sized organisations and financial education and wellbeing for those business owners, because it's just as tough, it's just as challenging. You know, there's additional challenges at the moment because companies are going through the cost of living crisis as well as all of us as individuals. So there's a lot of work to be done on that side of it as well, I think.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Go on, Mike, you had a question, didn't you? I think, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, a couple of questions. In terms of size of businesses, what are the smaller size of businesses that you work with? And then can you give us some idea on costing, please? Yeah,
definitely. Good question. So strangely, the first company that we started to work with was Hayes Recruitment, and they've got about 4,000 employees. I used to work for Hayes, and it just worked out that we started with them and actually won an award with them. That led on to similar sized organisations, other recruitment-based organisations, probably because of the relevance. We've worked with companies with 10,000 plus employees. Some of the water companies, a lot of public sector councils, NHS trusts, police forces, things like that. But we've also worked with organisations with 10 employees. Definitely the up to 250 employee bracket is where I'm really passionate about helping, because perhaps there's even more of a challenge for some of those organisations. We've tried to tailor that down and bespoke the service and the support that we offer for those organisations, and that I think is reflected in the cost a little bit as well, Mike. So we have a range of costs. There's not kind of an off-the-shelf per employee per month basis or anything like that. We learned and was told that companies wanted it to be a bit more flexible than that and dip in to the support that they might need when they needed it. So the packages that we offer range for SMEs from 495 plus VAT for a 12-month period. So they can pay £495 and get some element of support for all of their employees. That then increases dependent on what people want, really. If they want, access to educational content for their people, if they want interactive group workshops, if they want one-to-one support for their people, if they want leadership training, what we try and do, Justine, a member of our team, will understand the needs and then try to put a package together over a 6 to 12 month period that makes it as cost effective as possible. We try and stretch whatever budget an organisation might have over as long a period of time as possible, because that's just another thing that we've learned to do. Rather than it being a one-off, come in and do one workshop and that's it, can we try and offer different support and different activities over a longer period of time? I hope that answers your question, Mike. There is no sort of set fee, but that shows you the range and the starting point, really. Good stuff. Was there any other questions? Any other? Did anyone have any, from an employer's point of view? Because we get this all the time, concerns that a company might have or challenges that they feel that the company might have in implementing something like this, or barriers to entry or things that companies might come up against.
I think Rose has a question.
I do, yeah. It's
Rose, go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of a kind of general question, I suppose, in terms of saying, a lot of the businesses that I work with are in that really small bracket that you mentioned, sort of, perhaps between 10 and 50 employees, and they don't have big budgets. If you were to try and provide some sort of basic support, just so they've got the fundamentals covered, what would you suggest that they implement? Because obviously maybe not going into the surveys and that kind of thing, but just sort of to get a foundation in place so that they can do what they can within the budgets that they operate with. What would be your go-to thing that they should do?
Yeah, definitely. There's loads of things that you can do for free, and we share this with companies and through our content on LinkedIn and everything else. So as a starting point, you've got to look at, I believe, your existing providers, because of auto enrollment, they will have a pension provider, and going to them and seeing what content have they got for free, what can they offer, can they come in and do talks or do online talks? Some are more proactive than others on that. If you have an EAP, in place, you've got to look to make sure that's communicated well and hopefully engaged with if it's needed. Other employee benefits that you might have, I think that's a really good place to start. How can you communicate some of those that are linked to finances and money matters, and ensure that people understand the link to the life stage that they're at and what that employee benefit might be. There's a lot of good work that can be done around that. We talk a lot about talking about money, so that can be done. Obviously we've learned how to do that, and we do that with businesses. But if you can get some of your leaders together, or if you do have HR managers or mental health first aiders or anyone that's passionate about that, can an employee network group be put together to encourage people to talk about this? There's no cost to that unless you want to get someone in. That's the biggest barrier, I think. So just trying to create a culture of openness, to make it a little bit less scary, to have people within the business that people can go to if there is an issue. I think all of those things could make a massive difference at little or no cost, really. Where we come in is if they want to enhance that a little bit more, if they see a real need, if they see the value in that. And from a cost-effective point of view, what we are doing with some of the public sector organisations is encouraging them to come together. So if there was, I don't know, two councils or two police forces in a certain area, if we're doing work with them online, it's no extra cost for us to have more people. We don't charge per person. It's the workshop and that's it. That we would invite them to buddy up or couple up with another organisation, and maybe that's a good way. We're looking to do that for smaller companies. If there's a client, you know, if you're offering service to various different companies, can we look at doing that through you? We're very collaborative and look to partner with organisations. Can we offer that so that all of the different companies and all of the different employees could join that and benefit from that, and make it a little bit more cost effective, possibly? Don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Lucy, did you want to share the Southwest Water example that I know you haven't finished working on that, and that it didn't necessarily have the right outcome, but I think that would be another classic example to share of how getting you involved earlier or anytime would really maybe have a different outcome for the employer and the employee.
This is the lady with the domestic issue, yes. So yeah, we were asked to step in and support this particular employee, and her situation was she had been estranged from her domestic abuse situation, her husband, but actually invariably had found herself having to live back with him again because of having been made redundant from a previous role, and her problems of course were starting up all over again. So I was asked to give her some help and some guidance, but in particular hours during the day, so she had only private access to me, and so he wasn't around to get involved. Now that hasn't transpired as quickly as I would have liked, but in terms of the support that she needed to understand all sorts of budgeting elements, you know, where she could go for extra resources, being signposted for extra help, and she just needed someone to talk to about money because she just couldn't do that anywhere else. Incredibly sad case, and I hope to be able to continue that very, very soon. But this is where we can step in and actually start to look at independent, individual, little tiny cases that are quite niche, and be able to offer that person support.
It's probably important to say as well, Sandra, on that that we're a training company. We've been set up and created as a training company. We're not counsellors. My wife actually is a just qualified as a counsellor, but we're not that. What we try and do is be that human approach for companies and become a trusted training partner, but be able to effectively signpost to other organisations. So an example in this case is that we're now in talks and working with the Domestic Abuse Alliance. We reached out to some of our contacts within the different police forces as well, and can now give a much more comprehensive solution really, or support to people that are going through that. I think there's so much needed and to be done around raising awareness of just where to go, you know, where to go and what to do, what is available. And we're seeing that more and more really. So yeah, but it's also important. We also don't do the advice, although I'm a qualified advisor and we have other people in the team that have got the qualifications and the experience. We don't do the advice piece. I think that's really important. We, again, signpost back to relationships that employers might have with advisors, whether it's legal advice or, you know, in financial advice or mortgage advice or anything like that, to, again, enhance what employee benefits and relationships the company might have. We can look at the gaps. If there are organisations that could help fill in some of the gaps, we can do that, obviously, but our first step is to point them back to what's already there.
I think just going back to a number of the roundtable discussions, one thing that comes up repeatedly during these roundtable discussions is the whole dilemma that an employer finds themselves in between doing the right thing legally, which is also the right thing for the business, but also the right thing legally, but equally doing the morally right thing by the employee. And in the minority of cases which I have supported, I have found that yes, we end up doing what is required for the for the business. If it is dismissal, whatever it might be, we go down that route, but it leaves a very bitter taste in the mouth of the employer, because they feel like they're almost letting down that employee and not having that humane element in supporting them. And many a times when these issues come to light, to me, in my experience, it's pretty late in the day, and that's where I just think it would be useful to kind of take that sting out for an employer, and, like you say, signpost and then hope for the best. But at least there is that support available, or being made available, available at the workplace. Yeah.
I think that might also lead into why we've probably been asked to design and deliver the leadership training. There's the massive need for people to be able to spot the signs on that. It's not easy. The same with mental health and wellbeing. We're good at hiding what's going on and what's not going on. And it takes some real skill to see behind that and maybe spot the signs and then, be able to create the psychologically safe spaces and have the empathetic conversations and then effectively signpost. So as you say, to try and be proactive and preventative rather than having to deal with a lot of the challenges and the issues once they might have got to a stage that's going to cost more money and be even more stress and anxiety for everyone involved, really.
So can you just shed a bit more light on the one-to-one sessions that you have? I mean, what would be the typical trigger point for a one-to-one session with an employee?
Yeah, they really range now. Again, for different companies, they might be part of a process, like the case with Moorfields and their hardship grant. For other companies, they want to give one-to-one support to employees that might just have certain questions around one of the 5 key areas. We've kind of broken it down into 5 key areas, and there's again an exercise that employees can go through, a bit of a learning journey to understand, well, what is their area of focus, what do they need to be looking at, because that's sometimes the first question. And then they can arrange a one-to-one with one of our sort of trainers to explore that further and ask questions, and then be signposted and guided effectively to relevant resources, rather than having that kind of Google effect of just, well, it's a bit overwhelming. I can just search on Google and so many things come up, and what rabbit holes might I be going down? If they know they've got certain questions around the property ladder, for argument's sake, if it's around money management, if it's around protecting what's important, if it's around investing for their future or modern retirement planning, they can speak to one of our team and ask questions. Like I say, there's no advice, but they might be put, 1 or 2 steps further on to have the confidence to ask the questions, to actually get the support that they need. Other one-to-one sessions we've been asked to design and put together, unfortunately, around redundancy. So we've been asked by certain companies that are restructuring or going through redundancy consultations to actually help those people on exit to put money management plans in place, budgeting plans in place, to understand how long they might have, with the savings that they might have, or severance pay, and really get their ducks in a row so that they can focus on finding the right job rather than just any job that might cause more problems. So yeah, the one-to-ones can be adapted to different needs, I suppose. And we find a lot that the best way to offer those one-to-ones is not just an email out to all of the employees, because they won't know who we are. It's a very sensitive area, obviously, depending on what they need and what they're looking for. But a lot of them come off the back of our group sessions. So if we do put on a group session with a company and they see us and they understand how we come across, and they realize we're not monsters, and also we're not financial people that are giving advice and asking for very sensitive information, they feel a little bit more encouraged to maybe book a one-to-one session off the back of those. So it works quite nicely as a follow-on to a group workshop.
And from the employer's perspective, Ryan, so obviously I'm guessing there would be an additional fee for any one-to-one sessions. So if we were to take redundancy as an example and say, again, with SMEs, let's just say it's a pool of under 20. So let's just take a head count of under 20, just for the sake of simplicity. What would be the cost to an employer if something like that was to be put in place as part of consultations?
The one-to-one sessions we do in blocks of 8. So a company would, take 8 and then use them almost like credits, and there's no kind of expiry date. If they wanted some for redundancy in that situation, or some for other, other outcomes or for other needs, they could be used. But we charge £600 plus VAT for the block of 8. So again, if a company wanted more, we can try and make it even more cost effective. But also if they wanted to put a package together, so if they wanted access to educational content, some element of group interaction and workshops and some one-to-ones, we obviously look at how much they want to do over a certain amount of time, and then, make it as cost effective as we can, really. But that's the basic kind of set rate for a block of 8.
Thank you. I think Mike and Rose. So Mike, you go first, please. You've got a question.
Yeah, Ryan, can I just check that I'd heard correctly? Did you say that FinWell is not a regulated business, but you are a qualified advisor? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, some of the people in our team have the qualifications, have been working in the industry, but we're not regulated to give advice. We was told from the start, really, from HR managers, that they would prefer a training service that wasn't linked to products or advice, so that it could be, signposted back to advisors that they might have existing relationships with.
Okay, but you're regulated, but as an individual.
Yes, I'm qualified. Yeah, I've worked in financial advice and qualified, but we don't, as a company. FinWell's not a regulated company to give advice. It's a training company.
Okay, thank you.
Rose?
Just a quick one, really, coming back to that redundancy point about counselling people and helping them manage their finances moving forward. Typically, because obviously you've mentioned that you buy blocks of 8, and I'm guessing they can be used in any computations, but typically in your experience of doing those one-to-ones, have you found that people need just one of those sessions when they're thinking about how they're going to survive with their redundancy package and any existing savings? Or do you feel that there's a period of kind of like, here's a bunch of information, process it, and then have another one? What have you experienced typically, and what do employers tend to do in that situation?
Yeah, good question. The redundancy is quite new. That's only just come on literally in the last month or so, where companies have asked for us to design and deliver that sort of support. So we'd have to come back to you on that, to be honest. But we try. There's some other organisations that focus on maybe ongoing coaching and a block of sessions for one person, whereas we try to really help empower people to take their own next steps and give them the tools, and whether it's the educational content or whatever it might be, so that they can get a plan in place and then take the next steps themselves. So we would try to do just one session, really, with an employee. Some have led on to 2. Some people might want to have a follow-up session in 4 to 6 weeks or 3 months later, for a bit of accountability, to check in and see what's actually happened. But we wouldn't and haven't seen lots of multiple sessions for the same person. It's very different to on the EAP side for counselling sessions, for argument's sake. I know from my wife, where it's 6 sessions or anything like that, we'd like to try and have an impact just over 1 session, sometimes 2. But on the redundancy side, it's still very new. We've just started that.
Okay, and just as a quick, is a session an hour?
No, the sessions, again, we started doing them as an hour online. We've offered them online and in person. Then we went to 45 minutes, and then we went to 30 minutes. And it's just a combination, really, of seeing how can it be effective use of time, and not put another barrier up, for these people that then they're going to not go ahead with something because they think it might be too long, or people are very, very busy. So at the moment, they're 30-minute sessions.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Gillian? I think you just need to,
my name is Genevieve. Okay, my question
I'm so sorry.
I was going to say is, how do you measure that your training has worked after 1 or 2 sessions? And also, presumably the client is, they improve in confidence in how they handle money, but how do you measure that improved financial well-being?
That's a really good question. One we talk about quite a bit. we do it in a mix of ways, really. We talk a lot about stats and stories. So we've got a way that any employee can measure their own financial well-being. I didn't get a chance to take you through it before, but there's 5 areas of financial well-being, and basically we have a scoring system that any employee, any age, any income level, job role, family situation, whatever, can reflect on their own situation and score themselves. Out of 10, it's a really simple situation, and then score themselves. They get a score out of 100, basically. The idea is then that if they was to go on a group workshop or have a one-to-one session, if they was to revisit those scores, we could see some improvement. But also we do follow-up surveys from every one-to-one session and every group session, so we can ask employees anonymously, what did they like about the session? What did they take away from it? What didn't they like? How could they, how would they want to try and make it better? And then personal stories that we share from, anonymously from people that we've seen and spoke to and worked with, of how that's made an impact, really. I think that's probably the most impactful way, is actually the real life stories. But we're trying to encourage clients to do the data gathering and the measuring of this as well, to give some real, data-driven proof, really. Some of that we started when we first launched last summer, and we're going to be trying to revisit those scores and actually have some case studies to show some percentage increases. But it's a very hard one, it's a really hard one to measure, but I think that the combination of stats and stories, give a good reflection of it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you.
It's all right.
Any other question, Paul? We haven't heard from you, Elaine.
No, it's really interesting to hear what Ryan and the team does, but no questions at this time. Thanks, Sandhya.
Thank you. It's all right. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, sorry I was late. Got various things going on in my house, people being ill. Yeah, no, I didn't hear how the idea started. Sorry, could you just say that, Ryan? Because I can see what you do, but I missed out on that bit, the history of how that came about.
Yeah, so I have worked in the financial advice space and worked in financial services for over 10 years, but I was actually invited 8 years ago into a company called Softcat to put on training workshops, group workshops and one-to-one sessions, and really loved that side of it, if I was honest. I realised that there was a need to just explain the basics, that advice is very important and needed, but that not everybody is ready for that or wants to look at that. They might need, access to education or guidance or training beforehand. Really just timing, unfortunately, that, we had the pandemic and cost of living crisis now and everything that's going on. And I started to do this type of work with St. James's Place, who I was working with. It was meant to be in person in lockdown, and then lockdown happened, so we couldn't do that. So we had to learn how to deliver sessions and workshops online, which we did. And all that happened really, Elaine, was that we just got the feedback from companies. Hayes, who I mentioned we did a lot of work with, that we ended up winning the award with, kept wanting more and more. They invited us into their offices when we was allowed to then develop the one-to-one support. That led on to, looking at some of the leadership training and really, maybe like to Mike's point there, so many HR managers like what we was doing, but wanted a separate training offering that wasn't linked to any product or any service or advice or anything like that, that could come if people needed it. So made the decision really to set that up and start working with employers mainly to do that. So it was only since last summer that we started this, and unfortunately we've been really busy because the demand is there, and it isn't quite a new area, I think, for companies. They've got their heads around mental health and well-being, and this is the relatively new side to that. But we've learned a lot in the last 18 months or so. But that's pretty much the story of how it was created, and it's how we develop as well. We just listen to the challenges of what our employers are facing and the employees, and try to work around those areas and those pain points, really.
Thank you. Yeah, you need employer buy-in, but I suppose they've already bought in when they've found you. Yeah, so manager training, you haven't had any problems with the managers getting on board with it?
With regards to buy-in and engagement, yeah, that's a challenge all the time. It's a big challenge to get. I think because we was asked to develop and design leadership training, that will start to help. You know, it depends on company culture, right? If there's a company that have already got a very engaged, you know, open mentality, then it'll work a lot better. It is a culture piece. With some companies, you know, we've had great engagement and the sessions are brilliant, and you know, everyone, you know, contributing. Others not so much, but we have learned, and working in partnership with some of the employers, are ways that we can break down those barriers. And one of those, I think, is the leadership training, you know, getting them understanding for their own sake and kind of putting on their own oxygen mask first. You might have heard that phrase. Really, really important. There's an element of imposter syndrome as well, I think, with managers, that if they feel like they don't have their own house in order, how can they then help others, you know? So we are finding that with the leadership training, it's a great starting point. And again, for someone to go to one of those, they're going to be called FinWell champions, similar to sort of mental health champions, that there is someone within the organisation that people can go to that is not necessarily got it all sorted or hasn't got any problems, but understands the links to mental health and well-being, you know, has gone through the process and got some personal experience. When we talk about effective signposting, it's exactly that. It's not just, oh, have a look on the intranet or on our website, there's a few articles. It's real life experience to say, well, look, this is what I've done or someone I know has done. These were the challenges, and this is the outcome, and this is what's happened. I think that's really powerful when it comes to this. But it's always a problem, you know, different companies we work with, engagement and buy-in, it's one of the key ones, really. Does that answer your question a bit, or opened up more questions?
I'm just thinking about debt advice. Are you giving debt advice?
No, we don't give any advice. We partner with Step Change. Have you heard of Step Change?
Yeah, I have. Okay. Yeah.
So Step Change are a fantastic organisation that we partner with. And again, we can effectively signpost to them. We know what they do, you know, personal stories of how they've helped people that we've worked with or in the past. So that's a good example, actually, of, you know, an organisation that is set up and working very, very well, that most companies do not know about. And again, going back to the question about, well, what would you do with no budget or very little budget? There's organisations out there that you can implement or have them as almost as an employee benefit, or add them to your intranet. But it's really important how you communicate that. You know, just having them on the website isn't going to get people to use them. It's maybe, you know, doing a little bit more around that.
Thank you.
We've just got 1 more minute left. Actually, it's just on 11:30. Natasha, we didn't hear from you at all, but I hope you found it useful, or if you have any questions, I'm quite happy to take it really quickly.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I found it really interesting. Thanks, Ryan. It's really good to hear about all the things you offer. And I think the main thing I was just thinking about, which I think you covered with Elaine there, was about the leadership training and getting that bit involved to start with. It filters down to the rest of the organisation, I would say. I was just interested about what that what that involves, really, the leadership training, and how different that is to the group workshops. Is it like a 1-day course or a half-day course, or just the format of it? But I can follow up with you separately if we're out of time now.
I can try and answer in 1 minute if you want, Sandra. But we can follow up again after, and obviously need to get your address anyway for your pig.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Really the leadership training, again, so we haven't just come up with this and hope that it's really useful. We've worked with companies that we've already working with to see, well, how can it be effective, and what has been good around maybe mental health training and other leadership training, and what's not worked so well. So time for managers away from work is an issue, so we tried to limit this. This is a bolt-on really to other leadership training and mental health training. So it's a combination of 3 things. It's a group workshop for any leaders that want to be involved for an hour and a half. That's either online or in person. And that's, again, a very interactive, engaging workshop, roundtable talking atmosphere. There's an online module where people, you know, can go through that video content and learning, and then some quiz type questions to demonstrate understanding. And then there's a one-to-one session that we would encourage attendees to have as well, going back to that kind of putting on your own oxygen mask first, and going through the process and being able to talk about that with other employees. So it's kind of 3 different modules, and we've priced it to try and make sure it is cost effective for employers of all sizes. And if maybe employers want to start with one element of that training, they can, and then maybe look at the other 2 elements as well. So that you don't have to take all 3. We would encourage it, because that's what we've learned is going to, you know, give the best possible outcomes, but it is flexible.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I was going to really quickly say is what we can do with Sevenoaks Chamber is look at making some resources and tools and content free through the chamber. We set up microsites for different membership organisations, and we can maybe look at to do that. I'll speak with Catherine and Sanjay. And again, if there's we are really keen that I initially set this up to try and work with smaller companies, and then hopefully maybe work with some of the bigger ones. It's kind of been the reverse a little bit, but if there are groups of companies that want support, as long as they're happy to be on group sessions with other employees, we can look to do that and make it more cost effective. Because like I say, if it's online, we've got the charges that we need to charge to keep it sustainable, but there's no extra charge to us if there's more people. We want to encourage, and we always encourage as many people onto the session. We found ways to keep it engaging and interactive from doing it so often, I suppose.
All right, thank you very much.
Great.
I'm sure, yeah, you will have details of each other. I think if you approach Catherine, she's more than willing to sort of share, and for you to continue the conversation. We are just, you know, past 11:30, so we have to bring this call to an end, sadly, but do get in touch. Also, we're going to have the next roundtable end of November now. Am I right about that? September, yes, end of November. And I am already talking to a few subject matter, you know, experts to come and share, you know, the work that they do with employers. But if you've got any ideas, I always say this, please drop me a line on any specific topics that you feel, you know, could be useful for us to talk about, or any experts for us to bring in here. I specifically spoke to Ryan this time because we just noticed that there was a lot of financial difficulties that staff are facing, and this might be relevant for us to sort of, you know, work alongside with. But yeah, do drop me a line, please. All right, have a lovely day, and I will see you guys around. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
Thanks,
Sanjay.
Ryan.
And thank you very much, Ryan.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye, everybody. Bye.